Hello and welcome to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic is Haunted Georgia. I'm your host, Spooky, and here is your other most awesome host, Raven.
Hey,
Hey!
I'm kind of excited. This is our first time streaming finally on YouTube. We've been streaming for almost 2 years over at Ustream, and we finally decided, because we were having so many problems with Flash Player, to go ahead and try streaming from here. So,
Yep, we needed a new venue to broadcast from, and hopefully this one will work out for us.
well, yeah, hopefully now everybody can use chat, because a lot of times people could only see the stream and couldn't chat, or sometimes they could only get chat and not get the stinking player to work, or the website would take them to some other place. So it was always something. So hopefully it all works here and I can run the program properly. You know what
There
I mean?
you go.
I just want to say, most of you know me. I'm Raven. You see me come in as Spooky Raven under the chat name, and usually I'm the one who's always talking with you guys. So I'm Spooky Raven under the chat name for our chat stuff, and one spooky chick is Spooky.
Is me.
Yes. So now you guys can kind of tell who you'll be chatting with in the chat rooms when we're doing this stuff. But we love to talk a little bit about everything and anything. For most of you guys kind of know that who watched our podcast or seen our other show on Ustream. And tonight we're going to do Haunted Georgia. And we've done what, Louisiana already, and
Nebraska, Kentucky.
and Kentucky. And what we're trying to do is what we want to do is kind of hit up every single state, because there's so many places and each state that have all these different reports and sightings from people over the internet of really fascinating places that...
And you never really hear about them. You know, when you hear about haunted places, it's usually the same places, the Winchester Mystery House, Lizzie Borden House, the USS Hornet. And by doing haunted states, we can just kind of hit on all of the obscure haunted places in each one.
Well, that and some of the well-known ones, too, because there are some places that you
Right.
can actually go to and, rent a room or pay a little money to investigate that night, where there's other places that are
Exactly.
free, but we aren't technically advising you to do it. So if you go there,
Oh, no.
that's your own thing. Don't get us in trouble, but, But tonight, we kind of wanted to get back into doing a little paranormal. We've been doing a little other shows lately of like time travel and strange disappearances and things like that. So tonight we kind of wanted to go back and do a little paranormal. So we picked Georgia because actually Georgia has a plethora of places.
Oh, yeah. I was surprised at how many places there are in Georgia, and it's a shame that we could only pick a few of them.
Yeah, because we only do a 2-hour show. Any more than
Right.
that, it's way too much sitting here. But why don't you go ahead and start it off?
Okay, our first one tonight, our first little place is Old Highway 411 outside of Chatsworth, Georgia. Now, Chatsworth has a population of about 4,300 people, and it is the county seat of Murray County in northern Georgia. Now, according to local legend, the town got its name when a road sign with the word Chatsworth on it fell from a passing freight train. So someone put it on a pole and the name stuck.
So that's how they got their name for that.
That's how they got their
section.
name. Yeah, from a stolen sign. It was founded in 1905 as a depot for the Louisville-Nashville Railroad, and it was not incorporated as a city it was incorporated as a town in, I think it was 1910, but it wasn't incorporated as a city until 1923. Now, Highway 411 sits on the eastern side of Chatsworth, and it runs north and south. At one time, it was the only road in and out of Chatsworth.
So that's basically probably like the early 1900s or whatever you're saying, that was basically the only way in and out.
Well,
around that
actually,
area?
before that, around the 1800s.
Oh, so
In the
for good-
1800s, it was the only way in and out of Chatsworth. Chatsworth is kind of an isolated town. It sits in the wooded mountain regions. So,
I'm sorry, but that's what I do. I ask questions.
no problem at all. Now, and like I said, at one time, it was the only road in and out of Chatsworth. Now, people have reported seeing apparitions of Civil War soldiers and Indians. And some have reported these glowing eyes flying right into their windshield. That would make me
Glowing
upset.
eyes. Did they say
Yeah.
like more of a description, like red?
No,
Or...
they just said it was glowing eyes that would fly right into their windshields, and also there would be unknown things running alongside their car. So there have been reports of loud crashes coming from the woods, and also of strange things standing alongside of the road.
Well, large crashes and things like that, people could say could follow with some type of cryptid creature, because
Right.
normally in a lot of wooded areas or isolated areas, people tend to have reports of Bigfoot or strange cryptids. So they're saying there's more paranormal and cryptid things running along this old Highway 411.
I'm not really sure, but I would venture a guess and say yes.
Bring your camera.
They haven't exactly seen what was running alongside their car. They just knew it was running there, so I'm assuming that they heard it.
Right.
Whatever it is, it'd have to be fast to stay, to run alongside them.
Well, who knows what the speed maybe the speed limit? They're only going like 45. I doubt it, but
I doubt it. On those back roads in Georgia, I've lived down there. Those ridge runners do not follow the speed limit.
Well, they'll slow down for a deer because literally smash your car up. But for the most part, nobody in the country really follows the rules. They make
That's
their
true.
own roads.
They don't do that anywhere. The area is said to always be windy and foggy, even during calm weather, and that several houses in the area are said to be haunted, and one of the houses was the site of a double axe murder. Now, most of the reports are seeing soldiers in uniforms coming out of the fog and of Indians just walking alongside the road. Now, I searched the area for days on the internet, and I found
I was
nothing.
just going to say, you searched the area for days. I'm like, when did you go to Georgia? But yeah, on the internet.
On the internet, and I found nothing about a double axe murder. But I did find that the highway was close to an area known as the Trail of Tears. Now, for those of you, and I'm sure that all of you probably do know, are familiar with the Trail of Tears, in 1838 and 1839, as part of Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policy, the Cherokee Nation was forced off their land east of the Mississippi
Right,
River.
and they were forced to go what they called it the Trail of Tears. Yeah.
Right. They were relocated to an area in present-day Oklahoma. Now, these people were forced to march to their new destination, and along the way, more than 10,000 died from exposure, starvation, and disease. And it wasn't only the Cherokee Nation. There were the Muskogee, the Seminole, the Chickasaw, and the Choctaw nations. And why? Because gold was discovered in Delonga, Georgia.
Right.
Which led to the Georgia Gold Rush. But
so you're thinking because this was a part of the Trail of Tears might be why people are seeing all these Native American
I
spirits?
think so. I think so, because there have been reports of a lot of Native Americans just walking along the side of the road and, in the fog or whatever. And it's a shame that they were forced off their land just because gold was discovered. But I'm sure that they didn't like all these people, coming into their area.
Right,
Because
that could be like a whole show in itself too. The whole
I know that
Trail
the Trail of
Tears
Tears
and
and the
things
Georgia
have gone on
Gold
from
Rush, which they are connected.
right.
That's not the only reason now, but from what I was reading, that is the main reason. And at one time, these nations, the Cherokee, the Muskogee, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw Indians were vicious people. But they had to be, because they had all these settlers coming in and settling on their land.
Well, I don't think that they were vicious. I think when it comes to push or shove, anybody's going to protect their family or their
Exactly.
tribe, because
I don't-
you had
I don't-
all these strangers coming in and
Right.
pushing you around and killing you, and then you had some people who were good, but I would go nuts too and be angry and
Well,
want to
I'm not
protect
saying-
myself
I'm-
from being slaughtered, but
I'm not saying it was in their nature to be vicious. I mean, these were people defending themselves, and they were going to fight to the end.
Well, right, and I know a lot of people lost their
I mean,
lives along this,
well,
but that's
fierce.
another story. But
Yeah, fierce is more the correct word I want, really, than vicious.
But
But
aren't there like other battles that happened in that same area?
well, I also discovered that there were several battles in the area during the Civil War. Now, although none of these battles would be considered a great battle, most of the local soldiers were killed.
Right.
I think it was like 65% of them. So a lot of people from this area, this basically an isolated area, were killed. And all of this could be the reason that the area along Old Highway 411, just north and south of Chatsworth, are
Could be the
causes of the
for
hauntings.
yeah.
But the area south of Chatsworth is the one most haunted.
So you can
So
kind
if-
of go up and down this whole road, being that it was a part of or close to the Trail of Tears, and a lot of
Right.
people are having these experiences from seeing Native American spirits to odd shadows, cryptid
Right.
type of things, or hearing strange things in the woods, or seeing glowing eyes. Which I wonder if they're eyes or if they're just like orbs. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right. I don't know. It was just described as glowing eyes coming into the windshield. And I think that maybe these explosions and stuff that they're hearing in the woods may be residual haunting from cannon fire and stuff.
Oh yes, because of old Civil War battlegrounds
Right,
being near there.
because
They
there
do say
were-
that happens a lot. And
There were several battles in this area. So it only stands to reason that the explosions and the crashes and stuff that they're hearing in the woods could be from cannon fire or gunfire. It might be just residual hauntings.
That's just somebody still blowing up. No, I'm just kidding.
It could be that too. It could be a still blowing up. That does happen from time to time.
My moonshine. No, but a lot of people like that homegrown moonshine. We know a couple of our friends do, but we have hold on, my thing just hung up a little bit. The Kennesaw House. Now that's
Kennesaw.
Yeah, they're located near McNeil Alley and Whitelock Avenue in Marietta, Georgia. Now, from what I was looking up, because I kind of picked different places too, but this is like a 3-story building that was built in like 1845 near the railroad depot. And it was first initially used, because of when it was first built, it was used more of like a warehouse to kind of store all the crops of the cotton and stuff that they had around there. But then eventually they kind of converted it into like this restaurant that they kind of catered to the traveling passengers who rode the train back in the late 1800s. And it wasn't until I think like 1855 that this building was purchased by this guy. His name was Dex Fletcher. And now he converted it into like this inn. And it was then known as the Fletcher House. Well, it was during like the Civil War. It was used as one of the safe havens for the Yankee soldiers and, spies, because the guy who owned it at the time, the Fletcher, he was kind of like a sympathizer for the Union, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was kind of hiding all these people there, soldiers and spies, throughout the Civil War time period and stuff. But as the war kind of continued on, it was said that many people, the Confederate, were injured, and they brought all of them over towards this inn, and they basically made it into like a makeshift hospital / morgue, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which, if you think about it, any place back then during the Civil War that was nearby was used as a makeshift hospital or morgue.
Right.
But they brought like several wounded there, and they were going in and out of the building during that what was that battle? The Antietam battle? Is that the one?
And
Antietam, I think that's how you say it.
yeah.
Anyway, it was in that area. It was the worst battle in Georgia, and the bloodiest, and ended up having most of their soldiers go into this building here. And
Yeah, that one was actually considered a bloodier battle than Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the wounded were brought here into this building.
Well, I read somewhere online that the building used to be It actually used to be 4 stories, but near the end of the Civil War, General William Sherman and some of the Union soldiers went through the town, setting most of it, if not all of the buildings, on fire, except for the Fletcher Inn. And not only because it was brick, but because Henry Cole and his son-in-law was a Yankee spy.
Right.
And because of other buildings nearby that were engulfed in flames, fire leaped over the start and I'm getting tongue tied. I'm so sorry.
It's because they're just streaming from YouTube, so it made you a little nervous. But
yeah, but fire leaped over and started the roof on fire, and it destroyed the 4th floor of this building.
Right, because there was 4 floors from the beginning, but when General William T. Sherman and them guys were running through the streets, setting the whole town on fire, like you said, they didn't set this place on fire because, Fletcher was known to be working for them basically, and and he had a son-in-law who was a Yankee spy and stuff. So it was never intended for that building to catch on fire, but they just ended up, because the 4th floor was so damaged, what he did is he basically just got rid of the 4th floor completely, and that's why there's 3-story buildings to this day. And it was, I think, after the Reconstruction is when it was finally named to the what did I say was the Kennesaw House, and that's from that time period is when all the hauntings really started to pick up in this building. Was right after they finished doing the Reconstruction, after the Civil War, after it was used as a makeshift hospital and a morgue. And that's when I started noticing and reading of all these different reports and things that had been reported from way back then on the internet to why this place is haunted. Now they're saying, like, people who go there, because you can go and visit there now, there's like this museum on the floor and stuff, but there's some people who have gone to visit and they've claimed to have seen in the elevator doors as they open up, like you can go to any of the floors, even to the basement, and they said at one point if you go down into the basement, the doors will open and you'll see like this gruesome Civil War type of hospital room, which is really chaotic because you have like several people injured and dying soldiers, and they're screaming, like in agony, and you have like, they say you can even get like this smell as soon as the door opens. You smell like you're really there. You smell like this foul smell of like, decaying gangrene limbs, or, blood and anesthesia and all that kind of stuff. It's like it hits all the visitors' senses in almost every way, not just visual, but, just everything. It's almost like you're right there and you're seeing all this play out and seeing them getting their limbs cut off and screaming in pain and stuff. And they've also said at times that when the elevator opens, they'll sometimes see apparitions of Civil War surgeons standing in the elevator, like they're waiting to go to a different floor or whatever. Obviously, they didn't have elevators back then, but this is what people are saying and stuff. But they also claim they've seen apparitions of this woman who's like in a pink dress, and it's said to believe to be the wife of Dix Fletcher. But most of the people who have encountered Mrs. Fletcher, if that's who she is, she seems to only kind of hang around or show herself to like younger children or, teenagers, not younger, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I guess sometime in the 90s, from what I was reading, the building was converted into the museum. So it took a while before it converted totally into a museum, and I guess the museum's on the 2nd and the 3rd floor, and you can go and look around this place. And I also believe that they allow you to do paranormal investigation at night. You just have to call them or contact them and set it up. So if somebody has a group or wants to do that, they can contact them. And
now that's actually, isn't that actually like in Marietta, which is a little bit north of Atlanta?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I had the address I said above. I have to go. I think it was on McNeely Alley and Whitlock Avenue. But people can go here. You can contact them. You can go during the day and check out the museum and stuff. But I guess a lot of people are experiencing, I guess you want to say it would be considered residual that keeps happening in the basement and other parts of people's.
That's what it sounds like.
Makeshift hospital of all these men in pain, and you can smell the blood and you can almost taste it. They're like, it's so real.
Sick.
it sickens them. You know, it almost makes them want to throw up. That's how intense and real it is when people are experiencing this. But I think they experience more of the hospital or the Civil War soldiers more than they do seeing this woman. So, but it's definitely active. People say they've been getting, there's EVPs out there. Somebody claims that they have a video of a weird mist type of apparition, so you guys can Google this place and probably find them on YouTube. Some of these EVPs and or this video.
That sounds like a place I'd want to go. If nothing else, just go to the basement. The Pirates House, located at 20 East Broad Street in Savannah, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Now, next to New Orleans, Louisiana, Savannah, Georgia is considered one of the most haunted cities in the United States. It's rich in history, and in my opinion, and I have been there several times, it's one of the most beautiful places in the country. And it's also one of my most favorite places to visit. Now, on the east side of Savannah's historic district sits the Pirates House restaurant. It's of course, a pirate-themed restaurant, and it's housed in one of Savannah's oldest and most haunted buildings.
So it's claimed. I mean, we're just saying what has been said. We don't.
Yeah, well, it's claimed. I don't know that for a fact.
Right.
The building is over 250 years old, and at one time it served as a tavern and an inn that was frequented by both sailors and pirates and privateers. A privateer is somebody who would do anything for money for anybody that would pay them.
I've heard other people have different titles for that same type of service, but
yeah, really.
So I'm just saying.
Yeah. Some people still do that today.
Yeah,
under the building,
different titles.
Yeah. Now under the building, but it's now closed off to people. It's all walled up. Are a series of tunnels that run from the rum cellar to River Street, and these tunnels were used for many, many things, but mostly to Shanghai people.
What?
Now, yeah, for those who do not know what Shanghai means, men would get drunk, pass out, and they would be carried through the tunnels. When they woke up, they would be on a ship miles from shore,
forced
into work.
Or wars. There's been people who have been kidnapped and forced to fight overseas wars that has nothing to do with their country, let alone half the they don't even know the language. That's right. Another good show topic.
That would be another good show topic, but thus they were shanghaied. Now, one such victim was a Savannah policeman, and it took him 2 years to return home. The people who...
That was his story to his wife.
Yeah, that was his story to his wife. You got it. Honey, sorry, I've been gone for 2 years, but I was shanghaied.
Yeah.
Now, the people who frequented this tavern were mostly violent people. Yeah. So it's no surprise that there were many deaths in this place. Not to mention those that died of alcohol poisoning, because back then, especially in the 1700s, you know, most of the liquor that was sold was home distilled.
Well, right, and they would...
home distilled.
Right, but they would also add gas sometimes or other things to the alcohol just to kind of thin it out and save...
Yeah, not to mention when they would filter it through dirty things, you know.
Who knows? Mm-hmm.
The place mainly attracted the dregs of society from the middle 1700s to the late 1800s. Robert Louis Stevenson was so inspired by this place that in 1881, in his novel Treasure Island, part of his novel was based on the pirates and the privateers and the other lowlifes that often went there. Now, the upstairs was the inn, and a lot of hauntings seem to be centered there. Laughter has been heard. Employees who ventured to the second floor have reported seeing apparitions out of the corner of their eyes. And also a coffee pot that was upstairs would throw itself against the wall. They would also see the scar-faced apparition that they referred to as Captain Flint. Now, this apparition has also been seen in the basement near the walled-off tunnel. There has been a strong unseen presence felt on the stairs between the first and the second floors. And the apparition of a big surly man dressed in 18th century seaman, dressed as an 18th century seaman, that come out so wrong, has been seen on the...
I don't want to see a guy dressed like that.
I hear
I'd
you.
be like, back off, dude. I got other places to
go. He has been seen on the first floor. Now, he has been... Don't get me laughing, please. He has been known to walk into the kitchen, give the cook a menacing glare, then turn around and walk out. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had this apparition doing this to me day after day after day, I think I would find a new job.
Especially one who's dressed in that attire.
Yeah, especially one dressed as seaman, as a seaman. Oh my God, I will never live that one down.
Hey, payback for many times when I've said messed up words and didn't mean to. So, welcome to the Anything But Ordinary show, where we just say random things. So
I know, whatever pops out of my mouth, just you're taking your chances. The chairs and the place settings in one of the dining rooms get moved around during the night after the place closes, and voices and conversation are heard. In the 1990s, out of curiosity, a policeman went into the basement and he witnessed apparitions of men carrying a drunk. They went right by him and through the walled up tunnel. Now that sounds like a residual to me.
right.
A waitress went into the basement just to look around, and she became dizzy and sick to her stomach, so she went back upstairs. A couple days later, she went back into the basement, and the same thing happened to her. So she finally figured it was something telling her it did not want her down there, so she went back upstairs, and she never went into the basement again.
But it could have been, if you have too much, like, okay, the electrical boxes you have down there and high EMF readings and other things. I mean, could it possibly be other things affecting her that she didn't know of and just assumed that it was probably paranormal?
It could have very well been, but she goes down there twice, the same thing happens to her, and she figures, oh, wait a minute, something don't want me down here. Even if it's an electrical box, I mean, she just was... Some people are more sensitive to that stuff than others. Now, I've been fortunate enough to visit Neat there. And during my visit, I felt this bone-chilling cold spot and saw things out of the corner of my eyes. But, I never got a direct look at anything. But most of the people, though, who report seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. But who knows, if you're in the area and you stop in for a meal, you may be lucky enough to see more.
Hopefully not too much more, but especially
Really?
that one guy. But I don't know. I was reading too that it's actually a very popular place to actually have experiences.
People have,
not just inside the building, but outside
right.
of it as well.
But to get into this building, people have been known to stand along the street, and around the corner or what else just to get in here because it is a pretty popular place.
Right, but not just that, but people do experience paranormal activity even around the Pirate House,
right?
In places.
But like I said, though,
too,
Savannah, Georgia, you could run into a ghost, a spirit,
everywhere.
Whatever you want to call them, anywhere you go in that town.
Yeah, Savannah seems to be like, I tried to find other places besides Savannah because it seems like most of all the listings tends to be in
Savannah.
But Georgia does have like tons of places listed all over. So I guess if you're
right.
like, hey, let's take a summer vacation and you want to do a little paranormal in there, Georgia's definitely a good place to go. So is Louisiana and Kentucky and Tennessee and a lot of places. But, but definitely if you want to, you could always just hit up Savannah, Georgia for sure, and you'd get a lot of places in if you want to do like
people have been known to just walk down the street and see apparitions in Savannah. Like I said, next to New Orleans, Louisiana, Savannah, Georgia is considered one of the most haunted cities in the country.
Right. I was definitely reading a lot. Blah, blah, blah. Now I'm getting all flubbered in the mouth. But yeah, I was reading like a lot of places there too that, like I said, so I was trying to kind of look around and find other places, but there's this place, I think it's the Barnsley Gardens Resort that I read about, and it's located in, what's that place?
Adairsville.
Adairsville,
Yeah.
Georgia. But this place, now, from what I was reading, is reported to be haunted by several spirits. And, of course, some of them they're going to say is the former owner. His name was
Right.
Godfrey, and his family. Well, the Barnsley estate began sometime, I guess, as far as that I could find, was in the late 1830s, early 40s, during that time when the Cherokee natives were, again, these people were in this area, were forced off their land and sent on the Trail of Tears, like you'd mentioned earlier.
Right.
And it was set on sites that Mr. Godfrey, he purchased this large amount of acreage in the area, and it was said that the natives kind of resented what was being done to them, which of course they would,
Well, of course.
and that the white settlers kind of coming in there and taking over and stuff, so they were kind of upset. And so there was like this story that's going around. There's kind of two different versions of it, so I'll kind of say kind of both of them. But supposedly this elderly chief who lived in the area on that property that Godfrey purchased, he cursed the land which Godfrey built his plantation on. Where other stories say that after Godfrey purchased the land, he met this old Cherokee native that still lived on the land at the time, and they actually became friends. And Godfrey offered this old native man a job to work for him, and he would allow him to continue to live on the land, which to me sounds more believable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, really.
So construction began, and everything was going as planned until one day Godfrey decided he wanted to cut in and away parts of the bluff above the spring to build like where he wanted his mansion to be. And this kind of upset the old Cherokee man, and he explained to Godfrey that he couldn't do that because that particular plot of land was very sacred to the Cherokee people, and that if he did that, it would cause problems if he destroyed it, and it would upset the spirits of the Cherokee ancestors, and they wouldn't be very forgiving if he proceeded with that plan. Well, of course, Godfrey didn't really care what this man was saying, so he ignored his warnings, and he went ahead as he planned and started to destroy that part of the bluff so he could build in this huge mansion. And that's when this old man left and was never seen again. Well,
The old Cherokee man?
yeah, because he's like, I'm out of here. I warned you, but he was not going to, take fall to what the Cherokee ancestors were going to be, because this part of this bluff was known to be like
Right.
sacred for them. Anyway, long after is when everything started to go downhill. I mean, Godfrey had often traveled back and forth for business, and he'd leave his wife and his young son home alone at the plantation as it was still under construction. Now, his mansion wasn't built yet, so his wife and his son kind of lived in like this small house cottage during that time. Well, in 1844, his wife and his infant both fell ill and passed away, and of course, Godfrey was devastated by that news. And after some time, he supposedly started to go to these seances. And during these seances, his wife supposedly contacted him and encouraged him to actually finish the completion of the plantation and finish the mansion. So he did. He went back and he completed the rest of his plans of what they had for the plantation, and they finally built the mansion stuff. And then after it was completed, that's when Godfrey moved the remaining members of his family, which was, I think, just a son and daughter at that time. It was 1858. And they moved back. All of them started staying in the mansion. Well, during around that time, his son would go off on travels to different places, exotic places and stuff, to bring back flowers or antiques or just things for the plantation. And one time he was on a voyage and he was killed by Chinese pirates when he was looking for these exotic plants for the plantation ground. And his daughter, which she was in her teens, she died around the same time in the mansion. So it was said that the curse continued on for years with Godfrey, and his business began to fail, and then the Civil War began, and then Godfrey found himself basically near poor, and he just basically ended up just kind of surviving a little bit off of cotton crops.
Yeah.
And he had, I guess, reports of some of his Confederate friends were killed on his property as well, his estate, by some Northern soldiers and stuff. And they're buried behind the mansion. So these are reports of how all these people, died. They died here or died violently, and that's why this place seems to be haunted by these people.
Wow.
So I'm kind of getting a little story out here. But Godfrey said he passed away in 1873, basically near broke, and all his descendants who remained or continue to live at the Woodlands have said that the curse seems to continue on, and it was in the 1900s that the estate fell into ruins and had damage from a fire and severe storms. Now, this guy, because they kind of just left it by then, because no matter what, whoever lived there was part of the family, tried to do anything.
So they basically just abandoned the property.
Right, because then nobody had any luck. They were all cursed. Everybody of that family was cursed while living at this place. Well, the property began to take back, because trees were growing and overgrowth was starting to take it over. And I think it was sometime in 1980 when this guy named Prince Fugger, Fugger, purchased the land. And when he heard of the history of the curse and the land being cursed and what they did, he went and found 2 Cherokee chiefs to come to the woodland, and they blessed the land and they removed the curse. And then he restored the estate and the gardens, and it's now like this resort. Now, many who stay at this resort have reported encounters of seeing apparitions that they believe to be that of the Godfrey family. And many claim to see this man that they think is Godfrey, who still seems to be working at the manor, while others say that they see like this young woman walking the gardens, and they think that's probably like Julia, his wife. And they also have said that they've seen both Godfrey and Julia walking together in the gardens, like hand in hand, like they're enjoying their property together finally.
Right.
And many people say they hear voices, they hear footsteps, curtains are being tossed open on their own. Like you'll be in a room renting it, and the curtains are closed. It's like something will just rip them up violently and stuff. Objects are being moved and everything else. So you can go and stay here, because it's like a resort, a hotel, and you can go golfing and, all that stuff. But there's definitely a lot of paranormal activity people are claiming to be happening.
You notice, though, there's something to be said about these Native American curses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This guy, Godfrey Barnsley, he ignored this old Cherokee man's warning about building his mansion where he built it.
Right.
He just shrugged it off, curse, ha, 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 ha.
Right.
And look what happened to him. He
Not
went
just
broke.
him, but his whole generation
Well,
of
not
family.
just him. Yeah.
Well, everybody
he
who
went
stayed
broke.
there.
He lost his family.
Mm-hmm.
He just an entire generation, and who knows how many more. And so his family just, they got tired of all of this bad luck, and they just abandoned the property. And here comes this prince, and he had enough respect for the history of that land,
Yeah.
that he got 2 Cherokee chiefs or shamans or whoever they were to go in there and, release the curse, to bless the land and release it.
Right.
So his respect is what basically turned all this bad luck around and chased it away.
Right. But the fact that everybody who stayed there or anybody who was in that family that came there and thought, I'll just take the place over and I'm going to be rich or anything.
Right.
Everybody, something bad happened to everybody. And
Yeah,
then
they
just abandoned it. And
Yeah,
this
it was like,
complete
well,
stranger
Godfrey
come and took it over. So
Yeah, it was like, another member come in. Well, Godfrey couldn't make a go of this place. I don't know why, but I can. I can get rich here.
right,
And they ended up dying or leaving. Well, either way, they left the place.
right.
So
It's
I think I would like
definitely-
to.
I would go. These ruins and stuff.
I would go there.
Well, right. You can go and check it out on the internet and everything, and they have a bunch of buildings built up on the property, and you can still see the ruins of the old mansion and other places that Godfrey had built and stuff. But this building, I'm kind of going to zoom in a little bit, but in this building, people are said to see him, or people that are in the family in the old mansion here, and that they see them wandering around the gardens here and stuff. So if I was in the area, I'd definitely go check out this place. Not that I'm into
Really?
golfing, but it's a really beautiful place. I kind of cruised around on it on Google Earth Maps. So, can't have the money to go, you can always check it out on Google Map. You know what I mean? So,
Right. I lost my Chad here. So give me a minute.
Oh, well,
But
you could do the next one. The Civil
yeah.
War prison.
Okay, the Civil War prison is located on Route 1 in Andersonville, Georgia. Now, Andersonville prison was one of the most famous, notorious prisons in the Civil War. This is one,
awful.
this is another one that we can do an entire show on.
Right, it was
I
awful
mean,
what
it
happened.
just, it's just, the history there is just remarkable, and it's not a good history either. This was uh, a travesty of
Stuff.
human
Life.
degradation.
Yeah, good word.
Okay, this was once referred to as Camp Sumter. Now, this prison served as a camp and holding prison for Union soldiers captured and held as POWs by the Confederates. Now, when the Civil War broke out, both sides did not believe that the war was going to last long. And, you know, they honestly believed that the war was going to be over in less than a year. But as the war dragged on, the number of POWs grew into the thousands.
Mm-hmm.
In the South, prisoners were held in barns, or sometimes they were just simply released after they took an oath not to fight in the war again. But soon it became evident that a prison was needed, so the South constructed camps that would serve as prisons. I lost my train of thought. The most notorious was Camp Sumter, so named because it was located in Sumter County, Georgia. And the thing is, the war ended in 1865, and Sumter was built at the beginning of 1864. So this so-called camp was originally on 16 acres, but it was soon expanded to 26 acres because of overcrowding. It had a wooden stockade that was 1,620 feet in length and had a width of 779 feet. Now, there was also an area that was 19 feet that was referred to as the dead line. Now, in other words, any prisoner who crossed into that particular area,
That zone.
yeah, the dead zone, dead line, the guards had full authority to shoot them. Now, the first prisoners arrived in February of 1864, and then every day after that, every single day, hundreds of prisoners would arrive.
Every day?
Every day after that, after
February of 1864.
February, yeah, in 64, every single day, hundreds of more prisoners would arrive. Now, by August, yeah. So by August, a prison that was built to hold 10,000 people or prisoners had a population of 33,000.
So they had like 33,000 soldiers.
33,000. There were 33,000 prisoners, soldiers,
in
an area built only to hold 10,000.
Right. We'd show can't even talk. More pictures, but we're only allowed with copyright issues and stuff. So we got part of the land where it shows like monuments and stuff that's part of this land, but we couldn't show any other really pictures of the fort or anything. But the fort is still built there, and you can still see the fort.
Right. The prisoners were not housed, fed, or clothed properly. The environment was harsh, and medical care was scarce. The prisoners suffered both mental and physical anguish. The captain of the prison was Henry Wirz, and he was abusive and cold-hearted, and he allowed the guards to abuse the prisoners. Now, after the war ended and word about Andersonville got out, Henry Wirz was tried and convicted of murder.
Good.
And so weren't some of the guards. But like I said, Andersonville is another show completely. I'm not even getting really into this history.
Yeah, what they did. I mean, was brutal there.
I know, it was just absolutely brutal
men
and sickening.
And boys.
The prisoners suffered sickness that was a direct result of unsanitary conditions, dehydration, starvation, malnutrition, physical abuse, and lack of hygiene.
Right.
I mean, it was more common to stumble over a sick prisoner than it was a healthy one.
Right. That's
Now,
why
well,
this place probably has so much activity
oh,
because of the
absolutely.
conditions, because of residual. Not only that, but the emotions and that the negative energy that came from the different types
E-
of emotion into this land and
Exactly.
the blood and
Exactly.
death. They're all buried there too,
Well,
aren't they? A bunch of them buried there.
yeah, a bunch of them are buried there, but a lot of the crosses and headstones are gone. So even though that there are still crosses and headstones there, there are literally thousands that are missing,
Unmarked bodies, yeah.
unmarked. Right. Um, While there were some that died naturally, if you can call it naturally, many more died as a result of abuse and murder. Now, of 33,000 prisoners, 33,000 of them, less than 9,000 survived.
Yeah, that's a lot of people who died there.
Well, it's no surprise that Andersonville Civil War prison is believed to be haunted by several thousand spirits.
Well, who knows what
Uh,
else they could have, with all the negative and the murder and the nasty treatment stuff, they could have created poltergeists or brought in any type of demonic thing there or anything just because of that type
really?
of activity occurring there. It'd be like a haven for darkness to want to
Well,
hang out there.
I can believe that
Because it
several
probably fed
thousand
on their
spirits do
fear and
haunt the
their
place.
anger and everything else.
Well, visitors have reported seeing soldiers in a fog. Many have experienced a smell that was foul and literally took their breath away. They have felt people reaching out to them as if begging for help.
Like touching their legs and stuff when they walk through the buildings.
Yeah, and they just had this feeling of people just reaching out to them. And visitors have also reported that when they walk into this place, that they have felt a sense of despair, suffering, fear, and death. And it is reported to be the most haunted place in Georgia.
Well, you keep saying that on all of yours.
No, well, I know that, but Andersonville is
But I could see why, because 33,000 prisoners and only 9,000
less than 9,000
less
survived.
than 9,000 survived, but who knows how long they survived after being freed. But the
But
fact that
when they came out, they were just skeletons. I've seen the
literally,
pictures
I've
of
seen
some of
pictures,
these
yeah.
soldiers, and it's sickening to look at them because they were just victims of nothing but abuse.
Well,
And
right, it was kind of like Hitler's camps.
it's like Hitler's concentration camps.
Where people were literally starved and but I think that some of these people were even just as tortured worse. But the fact that they did it to their own American people just because you're separated by an invisible line from the north and the south, that let's treat them worse, or because they don't agree with,
And they
our
put
tactics. Sadistic people in charge, yeah.
That's it. They put sadistic people, they put a sadistic man in charge who in turn had sadistic guards. He turned his back on those guards, could do anything they wanted to those prisoners, and they did. And he just turned his back on them. And not only that, he abused them too.
Right. I could definitely
And
see why people are seeing a lot of activity here from seeing soldiers.
I do believe
roaming and
I have read
or feeling different types of emotion when you stand in a
I
certain
have read the stories on Andersonville, and there are a few of them out there, and I want to tell you it was just sickening. But I can believe that this is the most haunted place in Georgia. I realize that a civil war took place down there, but that was war. This was wanted.
But this is like a prison where everybody was tortured, literally tortured.
Deliberately tortured.
Right.
Deliberately.
Yeah. Why don't we just take a quick 3-minute break so we can let everybody stretch, get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, or do whatever, and then we'll come back and finish the second half of our show. And we definitely have a lot more, so everybody stay with us, but we're just going to take a quick break so you guys can get a little stretch or grab a snack. So we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary. I'm your host, Raven, and hopefully Spooky's back with us from the
Oh,
intermission.
yes, I am. You're not going to lose me that easy.
Right, like we said, this is our first time streaming on YouTube, but we have been almost streaming for 2 years, but just over at Ustream, and we finally decided to switch over here, since most everybody can get the chat here and not through Ustream for whatever it is. So, we're going to continue on discussing different places, haunted places throughout Georgia. Of course, we're not hitting them all because it's near impossible to get everything in a 2-hour show.
I know, because there were literally hundreds of places down there.
Right. But we just want to say thank you for everybody who popped in and are watching us tonight over here. And I think we'll just continue on with the hauntings. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, the next place, you don't sound very enthused. Get enthused.
Yippee!
Yay. No, the next place is McDonough, or how do you say the name again?
Dono,
yeah. Sorry, my TBI's acting up. But it's located on Griffin Street and Keys Ferry Street in McDonough, Georgia, if I said that right, sorry. But it's said to be haunted, and the surrounding businesses and houses also near the square are haunted or have a lot of activity. Now, many people have reported to have had encounters with seeing apparitions, of course, hearing footsteps and voices in the square or also in buildings near and around this square. People are reporting having their lights turned on and off in different rooms, claiming they're hearing phantom train whistle. Many believe why this area became a paranormal hotspot occurred back in the 1900s when this deadly train wreck happened. I think I have a picture of that too. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, I do. Okay. But according to the things I was reading on different sites, it happened back in the 1900s when a deadly train wreck occurred at Camp Creek in October, and according to the different sites on the net, it had been raining for several days, and on the night of October it was downpouring so heavily that it made for, basically unsafe travel conditions, and the Southern Engine number 7 had 2 coaches and a Pullman sleeper car attached as it departed the McDonough station and headed north. Well, shortly after leaving, just before reaching the Camp Creek trestle, J.T. Sullivan, who was the engineer at the control that night, saw that the embankment had been washed out beneath the trestle tracks, and immediately he tried to apply the brakes, but of course, due to the momentum and all the heaviness of the different cars attached behind it, it basically thrusted them off, and the bridge collapsed, and it sent them into the creek, and instantly the engine burst into flames, and smoke and fire started to, as well as water, started to fill up in the rest of the cars, and the cars kind of piled up on top of each other, and all these people were panicking, and they were trying to climb out of the wreckage, and it was said that only one man kind of managed to climb out and run back to the station to warn other trains and to get help for all those who were still on board. But by the time all the men in town gathered together to go help them, by the time they arrived, it was too late. They said that over 30-some people died and only 9 survived that night. And
Wow.
The bodies of the dead were recovered the next morning because they could not get to them because the flames were burning and they were so powerful. They just couldn't get it out.
Right.
So they had to basically wait till it smoldered out. Well, many by that time were unrecognizable, and many could only be identified by if they had some kind of document found on their person that was still there, So they brought all these victims back to that square, and they led them out, laid them all out on the square all over the place, and they waited for their families to come and claim their lost loved ones, you know what I mean?
Right.
Now, that's why they think that this area is haunted, because of that tragic train incident that occurred, and because they brought all those 30-some people and laid them out here for a few days until people could come and claim them, and most of them weren't even really claimed. Now,
Yeah, weren't some of them unknown?
yeah, and of course they You can go and look on Wikipedia, and they have a list of all the names of the people that they did know, and then they'll list like so many black people, because back then they didn't really consider them people, but we
Right.
don't. And then they had some unknown bodies, so only a few were really figured out. But I think it was 12 unknown bodies, and the survivors, if anyone is interested, like I said, you can go and read about the event. But people are saying that they're seeing apparitions here. They're hearing voices. They hear a train whistle. They get weird cold spots. There's lights turning on and off in the buildings. People are experiencing apparitions inside the buildings and houses around this area. So there's just a lot going on, and I think it's because of this train incident and that they brought all the dead bodies.
Right.
That's why this place seems to be haunted, or to have all this activity going on.
So, what about the bridge? Is it still there? I mean, the remains of it.
There's part you can go see in that area. The only part that I believe that's left is the trestle's original brick foundation still stands, but they're kind of leaving that as, like a memorial for all those who lost their life, which was 30-some people. So, and the engineer dude, and if it wasn't for the guy who ran back because when he climbed out, he actually turned around and helped a few women out and a couple other people, and then he just booked it back to town and tried to get as many people as could to come back, but because of the fire, they couldn't save them. So they had to sit there and watch these people burn to death, Eventually, I hope they
wonder.
would have died of smoke inhalation first before being burned.
Oh,
alive.
absolutely, absolutely. I wonder if some of those, in the buildings around the square, I wonder if those are like residual hauntings, like at that time. I mean, these apparitions walking around this place, they don't know that the building's there and will just walk right through it. Because maybe at the time the building wasn't there.
Right. But
That would
obviously some of them aren't residual because they're interacting.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
lights on and off and other things. So, and there's people who have EVPs and videos and photos of this stuff circling around on the internet. Of course, we're not posting all that stuff because it's copyrighted, but you guys can always go and research the sites up that we're talking about and find these evidence that people have been sharing on the internet,
Right. Central State Hospital it's located at 620 Broad Street in Milledgeville, Georgia. Now, in 1837, the Georgia lawmakers authorized funding to build a lunatic, idiot, and epileptic asylum. Their words, not mine, people. 5 years later, in 1842, it opened its doors as the Georgia Lunatic Asylum. Now, that same year in December, it received its first patient, Tillman B. There was no last name, just an initial. Tillman died of maniacal.
That's not as bad as your last one word.
Maniac exhaustion before summer. Now, many patients followed, and the place grew into the largest insane asylum in the world.
In the world?
In the world.
Wow.
It had 200 buildings. It was on over 2,000 acres, and it housed 13,000 patients. Now, thousands of people were shipped off to Milledgeville often with an unspecified condition or disability that had nothing to do with mental illness. They were labeled as funny. Not funny, haha, funny, different. Mm-hmm. By the 1950s, the staff to patient ratio was 1 to 100. And there were only 48 doctors, and none of them was a psychiatrist.
What?
48 doctors, not one psychiatrist in this lunatic asylum. And some of these so-called doctors were hired right off the mental wards. So you could say that this was a case of the lunatics running the asylum. Some of the treatments consisted of lobotomies, insulin shock, and the early form of electroshock therapy.
That electroshock therapy is a joke.
That I know, but it's been around. It's been around. People don't realize how long that's been around.
Right.
Children were kept in metal cages, and the adults were forced to take steam baths or cold showers.
Metal
And so,
cages, putting little kids like in a bird
yeah, they
cage.
put kids in metal cages. You know, I mean, like a little kennel you'd put your dog in. Um, and some were even treated with daily enemas. Now, what the hell that has to do with mental illness, I have no idea.
Well,
And
enemas are a good way, which I don't think you should be doing it all the time, but they're a good way to help flush some of your toxins out in
I'm sure they
the
weren't
area.
thinking about
But what they
toxins
were
back
doing how they were doing it is ineffective.
then. Exactly. Now, in 1959, a reporter with
Do you
the
know a
Atlanta.
lot of times, hold on, just before you say this, but think about it. Most of the people who went into these places, now, most of the time they went in there because a husband decided he didn't want his wife anymore, or somebody
Right.
thought their
Back
sister
then,
or whoever, they could just commit you. Or if they didn't want your kids anymore, you could just say, you could just commit them.
back
You could be
then,
committed for just, because you had you were just sad, or somebody didn't agree with you and did go make a report, and the next thing you know, you're thrown into these things. So a lot of people in there weren't funny or crazy. They were regular people who
they were by the time they got out of there,
well,
if they
yeah.
ever got out. But back then, it was easy to get somebody
You could get
committed.
anybody
Nowadays,
committed. You could get
yeah,
revenge by tossing
if
them
you
in
were
there.
exactly, if you hated somebody, you made up this story that they were crazy, got them committed. If you wanted to get rid of your wife, rather than divorce her, commit her.
Committed, or your kids, or anything else. It
Yeah,
was
or your
that
husband's,
easy.
whatever. It was undesirables. Commit them. It was that
If you
easy.
had sex without marriage, sometimes you were committed into that stuff. If there were so many
Right.
stupid things that they
Exactly.
put you into these facilities for.
Exactly. Now, in 1959, a reporter with the Atlanta Constitution, his name was Jack Nelson, he investigated this, what he referred to as a snake pit. And he brought the conditions and the treatments in this place to the public's attention. Now, he did a series of reports on the place, and after decades of ignoring other reports and complaints, the state of Georgia finally took notice, and as a result, the staff was fired, and Nelson won a Pulitzer. Big deal.
Yeah.
In the mid 1960s, new psychiatric drugs allowed patients to live in less restrictive settings, so the population of Central State, which it was now known, began to dwindle. In fact, Georgia governors Carl Sanders and Jimmy Carter started to empty Central State as fast as they could because of the reputation and all of this. But unfortunately, because of their eagerness to empty the asylum and not give much thought to where all these patients were going to live, it created other problems such as drug abuse and homelessness.
Right.
But, excuse me. But now,
Today. Well, how many people died there? Did you mention?
I lost
that?
my train of thought. I don't know how I did that. Okay. In all, 25,000 patients died at Central State Hospital. Now, today, most of the buildings are in great decay, and they're falling in because of the decay and because of
The
neglect.
neglect, yeah.
Right, but
Weather
they
and
still
stuff like
have
that.
they still have patients there, though. They actually have less than 200 patients, which are actually forensic patients. Now, a forensic patient, they are people who have committed a crime but are found guilty by reason of insanity, or they're people who are accused of a crime but they can't stand trial by reason of insanity. And also, to this day, services are held in the chapel, and believe it or not, people hold weddings in that chapel.
Well,
I can't
maybe it's a
imagine.
nice looking chapel. I don't know.
I don't
Or
know, but
maybe
I
like the
cannot
macabre.
imagine.
But
If I
no,
want to
but
get married, I'm not going to an insane asylum.
Some people like the macabre. I almost knocked my microphone off onto the floor. That'd have been a fun time.
Oh yeah.
With my water and my microphone, you'd hear bzzz. Well, there went Raven. In the end of the show. So I gave myself shock therapy.
There you go. Well, Raven can't join us anymore. She was just electrocuted.
She electrocuted
Um,
herself.
But the hauntings reported there are noises, voices, cold spots, crying, foul smells, and there is the apparition of a dark figure that has been seen in the halls and sometimes in certain doorways. Now, this place is guarded, and anyone caught on the grounds are arrested and charged with trespassing.
Well, of
So this,
course, because you have to
so
be
this is
you could be sued, you know,
well,
if
this is a place that you really can't go and investigate, and I'm not going to suggest that somebody do it. But this is also a place that really, after reading the history and everything of this place, this is another place that would make a good show.
well, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to do, we do, like we said, we do a variety of everything, not just paranormal. I mean, you can go down and look through our podcasts or 2 years worth of stuff where we kind of just, we talk about a little bit of everything. But yeah, I think insane asylums definitely have a lot of activity, if not
Oh yeah,
residual, but maybe not always just residual, because what if these people really had some type of condition where they passed on, they don't even know they're passed on, and they're continually living out their life on these grounds? Because I've
I know, and some
gone
of the
to,
and just about most of the patients who died here are buried on the grounds
right,
with just a cross and a number marking their graves. So there is a cemetery to this place, and I can only imagine how many spirits are roaming through this place. This is another place
well,
that
to hear that, you
basically
hear voices and
there
moaning
was
and
abuse.
crying, you know, from all the abuse that happened to these people, you know,
Yeah,
and that you know, just the energy from that type of emotions and fear and anger, and you know, a lot of people went insane and
and
were just dumped
hopelessness.
there. Yeah.
You know, the people that were put in there because they were different than other people or because somebody wanted to get them out of sight. You know, I mean, they had to have a really heavy feeling of hopelessness because there was absolutely nothing they could do. Nobody would listen to them. Once they were committed to this place, they basically had no voice.
Right. I just think, I don't know, because I've, you know, used to take random drives all over the place, and I've discovered abandoned buildings or even an old insane asylum in the area. And before I knew what it was in that area, right when we like came on it, you could just feel like you were hit with this type of energy, and you're just like, what did
Right.
I just drive through or drive by? So we went back a couple of times and discovered that it was an abandoned insane asylum, and we read up on the history of what happened to that place, and it was just, you know, kind of awful like this place. And you could almost feel the energy of these people still roaming the grounds, and since the gate was kind of partially broken, it was almost like they were crossing the street or standing in the street. The way when you drive through that or just slowly drive past that, it's almost like you feel like you're driving through people, or they're right there
Right.
on both sides of the road. It's just that I've never
I have been
had
I
that
have
feeling
been
like that before, except for at that
right.
place.
I have been to places where something happened that you knew caused great fear. That's like Little Bighorn. I have stopped in there a couple times, and that was basically a slaughter. I can imagine the soldiers that just were afraid, and it felt like that all that energy was just coming around me and just suffocating me. It was just such negative energy, and that's not the only place I've ever been to that this has happened to me. So I can imagine walking into a place like this, and I don't even want to think about all the energy that would attack me.
Right. I mean, who knows the things that could have been attached to. Oh, because we had a guy on one time on one of our paranormal talk nights. We'll have a paranormal talk night where we invite you, our listeners, if you want to contact us. You can share your own experiences with us and with others on the internet with your photos, videos, EVPs, or whatever. And, you know, we just kind of have like an open discussion where we all share our stories with everybody and, you know, just keep growing in this and knowing more about the paranormal and stuff. But remember that guy was on, and he was a security type of head of security at one of the insane asylums, and he said a lot of people
Oh
in there,
yeah,
you could tell that they were possessed because they were always going in and out of states of possession, but you could
yeah,
tell it wasn't them. He said there was like a little 5'2" girl who could knock down 4 tall, like 6 foot tall men, and was
yeah.
just possessed, and you could tell she was possessed. And so some of these people, they could have been food for evil spirits or anything else. There's a lot of
Exactly.
things that go on, and when they keep you medicated or when you're under
And when you're that,
influence.
and when you're that medicated or under certain influences that heavy, anything can get a hold of you. Anything. Back then, electroshock therapy wasn't like it is nowadays. They literally put
Fry your
metal to.
brain. Yeah.
They literally fried your brain.
Right.
They didn't give you an anesthetic or anything. You were absolutely conscious and awake when they did that.
You were an experiment to see how much the body can
Basically,
take.
exactly.
Let's move on to the next one, so we still can kind of still get through all of them before we run out of time. But the Forsythe Park Inn. Now, this place is located on 102 West Hall Street, Savannah, Georgia. Now, this is a Victorian-style mansion. It was built in 1890, and it was used as a private residence by an Aaron Flint Rutter Churchill, who actually is a kind of a famous guy. He's like a famous Canadian sea captain. Go Canadians. Love you. But I'm just saying. I just met a couple Canadians recently, so they just had me cracking up. But I'll have to tell you a story later. But it was during the 20th century that he and two of his nieces and his wife moved in to this Victorian-style type of house. And the two nieces' names were Mary and Lottie Churchill. And on June 1920, Captain Aaron Churchill passed away in his home, and 9 years later, Miss Churchill sold the mansion, which was then converted into a boarding house, and that's when it eventually became like this multi-unit apartment homes. And
That happens to a lot of those old mansions. Instead of preserving the old mansions, they'll just convert them into apartment buildings. I think that's a shame. Sorry for interrupting you.
But not if they keep it up and make it still beautiful, and they're allowing the building to stay there. In a way, it's kind of a good way. Don't you think?
Well,
But instead of letting the
probably,
home be destroyed.
you'd at least be able to say, "Hey, I live in the Churchill mansion."
That's true. I live here and it's haunted. But now you made me forget what I was saying. His wife sold the mansion, which was then converted, like I said, into a multi-unit apartment homes later on. And it was during the 80s when the house was purchased, and then it was redone again into what it's known to be as the Forsythe Park Inn, and it's across from... now you made me lose my spot, Spooky.
I'm sorry. Forsythe Park.
Yeah, and right across it is the park, which at one time was the site used by the Union troops campground as, like, they just camped out there, and it was around the Northern Aggression War time period, which, again, a lot of places down there in Georgia was used for Civil War stuff. But now it's been said that the inn is haunted by an apparition that's some to be that of Lottie Churchill. And the reason why this occurs, there's this story that I was reading that's been kind of told on the internet. There's kind of like different versions, but they all kind of summarize into the same thing. But Captain Churchill's wife, Lois' sister Anna, she fell ill and she came to stay with them as she recovered. Well, during that time, it was said that Lottie, who was like the daughter to Aaron and Louise because they raised her, became very close with Anna, which was his wife's sister. Okay, now they kind of got close and they spent a lot of time together, so they were kind of like sisters in a way. And as she was recovering, well, one day, as the story goes, Lottie, the little girl, walked in on Aaron and Anna in a passionate embrace. And she was really upset and troubled by what she had just seen because Aaron and Anna weren't husband and wife. And so Aaron was kind of fooling around with his wife's sister. So she didn't want Aaron and Lois's marriage to be destroyed and the family torn apart because that was basically like her family. So Lottie decided to take action into her own hands. So the following day, or sometime around there, I'm just going off what the net's saying, the three ladies kind of sat having their tea and cake in the garden. Well, Lottie slipped some, I don't know how to say this plant.
Oleander.
Yeah,
Elixir.
Yeah, my TBI's acting up. Basically, she slipped this stuff into her tea, and she killed her. So she kind of as soon as Anna kind of drank the tea, she started to gag and choke. And of course, Lois, being her sister, reached out to Anna and was cradling, trying to help her and like, what's going on? And then Anna passed away. And when Lois was in tears crying, she told Lottie a secret right then and there. She said that Anna was her real mother, and that due to certain past events that Anna had to give up Lottie to Aaron and Lois to raise as their own child. Well, of course, then Lottie was completely just freaking out because she just killed her real mother. So she kind of had like a breakdown. She had a breakdown from seeing them, her uncle and Anna in an embrace. She was worried about this family that she only ever had was going to be torn apart, and then she kills this lady who ended up being her real mother. So she just basically had a mental breakdown, and she never recovered from being back to the normal state of what she was. So the Churchills ended up committing her to a mental institute where she eventually died. Well, it's said that Lottie loved her uncle and her aunt, so as the years she spent there, they assume because she was so happy there, that's why people keep seeing her haunting this place, because that was her happiest time there, not at clearly not at the mental hospital. You know what I mean? Right. I don't really think too many people have a good time at the mental hospital unless you're on some really good drugs, but people...
Or you're really insane.
Yeah. Licking the walls. But people claim to have had encounters with this young woman who looks like Lottie standing on the staircase, as well as sometimes in the courtyard near the fountain. Now, some believe it to be near the incident of where the woman was murdered, where she died. So they believe that's really must be where the spot where it happened. But here's my thought. If they're seeing a woman that kind of resembles Lottie, and we now know that Anna was Lottie's mother who died on that spot, maybe it's her mother that people are actually seeing and not Lottie, because they would have similar features. And who's to say what age you are when you come back as a spirit? So maybe people aren't really seeing Lottie, but they might actually be seeing Anna, since she died a violent death in that spot.
Or maybe they could be seeing both of them and assume it's the same person they're seeing.
That's true, because they are mother and daughter, so obviously they're going to have similarities. You know what I mean? So this place here is... It's
an interesting thought.
Right, but because of this murder that took place and whatever, it's, and because she loved her aunt and uncle so much, that people are seeing this woman, or a woman like her, which I think is probably her mom, but they hear voices, footsteps, seeing apparitions. So another haunted place as well. And I think I've seen where people actually can have like parties or something here. So you could probably Google and find out if it's a possibility to hold an event there, or maybe even possibly do a paranormal investigation. I'm not quite sure on that one. So that's about it I have for that one.
Bonaventure Cemetery is located at 330 Bonaventure Road in Savannah, Georgia. Now, it's considered to be the oldest and most haunted cemetery in Savannah. It was mentioned in the book turned into a movie directed by Clint Eastwood, The Garden of Good and Evil. Now, the land was once part of a huge plantation owned by Hosea Tatnall Jr., who was well-liked and known for the large social functions that he held in his huge mansion. Now, one night, the mansion caught fire and was a total loss. In fact, it caught fire twice, once in 1771 and then again in 1800 during a dinner party. Now, there's no mention if any lives were lost during the second fire, but some say he had tables moved to the yard and he and his guests drank wine while the mansion burned. It's up in flames anyway. Let's just sit here and watch it.
That reminds me of a story. I have to say this real quick, but one time, me and a couple of my friends and my brother and his girlfriend, we went to this bar. It was attached to the bowling alley, and we would go there, play pool or whatever, and we just got our pitcher and stuff, and we ordered some appetizers. And all of a sudden, they're like, you had to leave the bar, it's on fire. And we're like, what? So we took our beer and appetizers, and we sat out in the parking lot and drank and ate our food and watched the fire
Watch the place burn to the ground.
Yeah, watched it go aflame, watched the firemen doing their thing. And then we brought, because we're like, we just paid for this. We're not going to just leave it all here, So we sat out in the parking lot and ate and drank too. So I understand why this guy was like, well, my place is burning down. I'll just pull out some chairs and watch it burn, drink some booze.
Yeah, it's more wine. Well, visitors to the cemetery have reported hearing sounds of a party and glasses clinking, so maybe the dinner party's still going on. One of the more famous ghosts, though, is that of little Gracie Watson. Now, this is actually a famous statue because it's been all over the internet, and it's just a gorgeous little statue. Gracie was born in 1883, and she was the only child. Was an only child, and her father worked as manager at the Pulaski House. Now, they say that Gracie was charming and was a beautiful child, and the staff and the guests at the Pulaski House just adored her. But unfortunately, just a few days before Easter in April of 1889, Gracie died of pneumonia. She was only 6 years old. Wow. Now, she is buried in Bonaventure Cemetery, and the life-size marble statue that sits on her grave was carved by a sculptor named John Walls, and he carved it from a photograph of Gracie in 1890. Now, according to local folklore, Gracie is one of the most active spirits in the cemetery. There are several, supposedly, but they claim that she is the most active.
Seen. Yeah. Or
yeah, one of the most seen. Visitors who visit her grave will leave toys and gifts for her, and if anyone takes one away, they say that Gracie cries tears of blood. And some even believe if they rub her face, it'll bring them good luck. But because of that practice...
Rub the statue's face, not her real body's face.
Yeah, rubs the statue's face.
You don't go digging up graves just to get good luck, because that will give you the wrong kind of luck.
Exactly. But unfortunately, the practice of rubbing the face of the statue, it has done some damage, so the grave and the statue have been fenced off with a wrought iron fence.
Which makes sense, because you're basically rubbing off the stone.
Exactly. And after a while, and people don't realize it, but stone will wear away. It's also claimed that Gracie haunts the Pulaski House where she died. The Pulaski House, I will get this out one way or the other.
That's okay, I'm screwing up all night, just my TBI's acting up, so no big deal.
Yeah. Well, it was an upscale hotel that catered to Savannah's elite. Her father was manager and her mother was hostess, and she hosted various high society parties there, and Gracie would sometimes act as co-hostess.
She'd be the hostess with the mostest then.
Really. And when she became bored, she would just hide and play underneath the back stairwell of the hotel. Now, for years after her death, and up to the time the hotel was torn down, the staff claimed that they would hear giggles of a young girl, and on the lot where the hotel used to be, people have claimed to see a young girl in period dress running around. Now, other hauntings in the cemetery are said to be moaning, crying, and dismembered voices, and if that isn't enough, there is said to be a pack of ghost dogs running through there.
Oh, heck no. Ghost dogs chasing you
Ghost
down?
dogs. And some people have claimed that this pack of ghost dogs had literally chased them out of the cemetery.
Okay, I wouldn't mind seeing people or that, but to have a pack of ghost dogs hunting your butt down, no thank you.
Well, the thing of it is, too, most of the people have not really seen them, but they claim to have heard them barking and feel them chasing them. And the dogs are believed to have belonged to a voodoo priestess that is buried there.
Oh, so if you get too close to their grave, then the dogs were protecting their masters.
That very well could be. But like I said, most of the people... matter of fact, I think there was only one person that actually claimed to have actually seen this pack of dogs. Most of it were the people would hear the barking and would feel the dogs come running at them. And they would turn around and run out of the cemetery.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot kind of going on in this place.
Yeah, there are several spirits in the place. There's besides the voodoo priestess, she has been known to wander around in there.
Well, that place in the 1800s where during the dinner party.
Denny?
Yeah, I know. The dinner party. They're like, let's just take our food and drinks out and just watch the place burn.
Yeah.
That's my kind of people. Well, you can't stop it. You might as well enjoy yourself while it's going down in flames. So.
Well, and besides that, even in the cemetery, people have claimed to have heard voices in conversation and glasses clinking. And the cemetery itself, like I said, is located where this plantation used to be.
Well, right. You can go to cemeteries during certain visiting hours, but I don't
Right.
advise, climbing the fence and getting yourself into a position where you can end up going to jail for the night.
Right.
But, I don't know if you can contact somebody and find if there's a way that you can donate to be able to have a small group to do investigations there. Sometimes cemeteries allow that, depending on what.
Well, just about every cemetery has a groundskeeper.
Right.
So,
But
or somebody that
if you take
takes
a
care of
donation
it.
for it to help
Right.
keep it up. They may allow a small group of paranormal investigators at evening hours, but we don't advise sneaking into these places.
Well, and also, these things have been reported to have happened during the daytime too. So it doesn't matter really what time you go there. You may encounter something.
I have an experience, right? I've had
Right.
encounters at all times of the day and night. There's really no specific time more so than the other. I've always encountered. It seems more so in the daytime, really, for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna talk about the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, which is located at 900 Kennesaw Mountain Drive in the Kennesaw, Georgia. I cannot talk tonight, guys, so I'm just...
Kennesaw.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just having problems talking tonight. But it's on 2,965 acres, and it's protected Civil War battlegrounds of the Atlanta campaign, where opposing armies fought I think during like June 19th of 1864 until like July 2nd of 1864. And this part of the area was used as a barrier between the Federal forces and the Confederate Railroad and Manufacturing Center. And it was said on some sites that about 4,000 men lost their lives on the field. And stories and encounters of ghostly activity started shortly after the war ceased. Well, people have shared stories of seeing Civil War soldiers reenacting a battle on this field. And a lot of people who are witnessing this, they actually think they're watching a real reenactment taking out. Not a real war, but they actually think these are real people dressed in full attire.
Reenactors.
Reenacting this war. There's battle on this field, and they don't know that they're ghosts because they'll be watching for a while, and then if they watch long enough, these people just disappear. So then they find out that these weren't living people; they were spirits.
Actually seeing a residual
or maybe
haunting.
Or spirits. But many times they report having this odd smoky mist is seen on the fields with sounds of cannons and gunshots being fired. And in certain parts, many will have the smell of blood and gunpowder overcome them while they're walking through the parks. Now, some housing subdivisions were built on part of this battlefield, and reports from some of these homeowners are of seeing apparitions of soldiers and experiencing a plethora of paranormal activity occurring in their houses as well, because they were built on, these subdivisions were built on this war where over 4,000 men lost their field where over 4,000 men lost their life.
Well, there was an episode on Unsolved Mysteries back in the late 1980s of a couple named Tatum whose house was haunted, and they found out through a little research that the land their home was on was part of that battlefield. And James Tatum would often hear a bell ringing in his house, and he thought it was his wife ringing the bell to have him come upstairs and to help her, but it turned out every time that it wasn't her. And they also had seen a male apparition as well, and among other experiences.
Right. I think I saw that too, like because they play like old unsolved mysteries still on the internet or cable and stuff nowadays. But
Yeah.
it was this man, because she was sick or whatever, and she kept ringing the bell if she needed him to come upstairs and stuff. And
Right.
it was never her. And he was starting to get really mad. And I think they even put the bell away at one point, or they even came up with, like, if you just ring the bell 3 times, then I'll know it's you, not the ghost. Well, then the ghost started ringing it 3 times, and he's like, I'm done. I'm never answering that bell again. So yeah, I remember that.
I think
episode.
I think his wife was disabled or something, because there was a reason why she would ring that bell for him to come up and help her.
Right. But like I said, a lot of these houses were built on part of this battlefield where all these men lost their lives. So of course, these people are having odd experiences, from voices to soldiers to lights turning on and off, objects being moved. But there's people sharing their experiences in encounters of the paranormal when it comes to the Kennesaw battlefield. And they can be found on several websites. You guys can look this up, and you'll see them telling really in-depth stories. And sometimes they have actual photos for you guys to, and EVPs that are out there. So you guys can research this up too and find these things. We're not allowed to play all this stuff because of copyright stuff. But these people are seeing soldiers, battle reenactments, voices, smell of blood and gunpowder. Even people have seen, when they're walking through parts of this park, they've seen soldiers riding on horses down the roads, and then they suddenly just disappear through solid objects. Like your car. Or
I like going to old
trees and stuff.
battlefields. Yeah, I like going to old battlefields because a lot of times you see or you feel something. I have never been to a battlefield that I have not at least felt something. I think that most of them, if not all of them, have some activity there, even if it's, just one spirit. Of course, most of them, it'd be more than one, because we're talking about a tragic event that happened in history. But I enjoy going to battlefields, even though
sometimes you can feel the energy at some of these places where you're just
right.
like, whoa,
I know, and that has happened to me, where I have walked onto a battlefield, for instance, and it was like, oh, whoa, this energy is just so thick. And sometimes it's been so thick that I've had to turn around and leave.
Yeah, you've been to a couple places you wanted to check out that were paranormal, and then you just were like, yeah, even though I drove all the way to this, I think it was, what was it, the Villisca House or something?
The Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa. I wanted to go to that place. I wanted to go to that place so bad. And when I got there, I was walking across the yard up to the house.
Yeah.
And something told me, said, if you go in there, you're not coming out. And I turned around and left. That's how strong that particular energy was.
Right. And some people are more sensitive to this type of stuff than other people are, and it kind of makes you vulnerable. But
I know. I've been to places where the energy has been thick, but I have gone there anyway.
Right.
But there are times, though, when the energy just feels different. It has an evil, dastardly feel to it. And that's when you have to you don't mess with it. Me, I don't mess with it. You people can do what you want.
Well, some people like to.
Some people like that sort of challenge.
Right.
Not me. I turn around and I leave. Because I'm not going into a place that actually, it's not that it's fear that I'm feeling, but it seems like every hair on my body is standing up.
Right. Well, it's not meant for you to be there. So
Exactly. The Kehoe House, located at 123 Habersham Street, another Savannah, Georgia location. Now, it is now an upscale bed and breakfast that caters to select people. It was built in 1892 by William Kehoe, and it is a huge 4-story Victorian house. At one time, this house was owned by Joe Namath, and NFL football superstar of his time. I think he had one good year, and then after that, it was...
Well, some of us aren't all that big into sports.
Yeah, I know. I think he played for the New York Jets. He bought it in 1980 for $80,000. And then he turned around. What he was going to do, he was going to actually make a nightclub out of this place. And the people in the neighborhood were all, they were upset, and they were really ticked off at Joe.
Right.
So, but he never did turn it into that, but he kept it for 9 years. And in 1989, he sold the place for $530,000.
So he made a
Now,
little bank on it. 9 years.
yeah, really.
I
I'm
shouldn't say a
sure
little, a lot.
he made a lot of bank.
But
He
it
sold
probably
that.
because it was his name on it, you know.
Well, that's probably why it went for so much, because it was owned by Joe Namath.
Mm-hmm.
But at one time, for most of the 20th century, it was used as a mortuary until it was returned to a private residence. Now, William Kehoe came from Ireland, and at the age of 10, when he came from Ireland, and he grew up poor. He grew up in a poor, loving, and God-centered family.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while he was still a teenager, he served in the Civil War fighting for the South.
Back then, a lot of young boys were fighting and lost their lives.
Well, there were cases of families where a brother would fight for the North and a brother would fight for the South. It just, whichever cause they believed in.
That whole war in itself could be a story, because some of the reasons
Oh,
why
yeah.
it really occurred wasn't so much for slavery. It was just kind of tacked on later.
It was actually started over taxes. But after the war, he apprenticed as an iron molder, and he developed his skill so well through hard work, and he had a great business sense that he eventually owned his own foundry.
Cool. Well,
Now,
yeah.
at age 26, he married Annie, who happened to be the love of his life. Now, together they had a lot of kids. No wonder they needed a big house. They had a lot of kids, but only 10 survived.
Well, back then, there's certain conditions or, colds.
Well, no one really knows for sure how many children they had besides the 10 that were living, that maybe died in infancy or from an illness. But they had 10 surviving children. Now, William and Annie never let the wealth go to their heads. They kept their belief and value in God, who they believed was the giver of all gifts and blessings. So this was a very religious family.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of letting a nanny put the children to bed, every night Annie would go up, and she'd hear their prayers and read to them and kiss, and she kissed each one of her children goodnight. And she did this every single night. Now, it is reported that their 5-year-old twin sons died in what was called a dumb kid accident. They didn't give any details of what actually happened.
That you could find, yeah.
That I could find, but they were playing in one of the chimneys when they
What?
both... Yeah, they were playing in one of the chimneys when they were both killed.
What the hell?
And like I said,
I don't know what they were doing in a chimney.
I don't even know if they were climbing up that chimney or what they were doing, but after the twin sons died in this chimney,
Mm-hmm.
all of the chimneys in the house were blocked off and decorated with angels. Now, other than this, I could find no other tragic deaths in the home, but William and Annie did pass away in the home.
Okay.
The spirit of Annie's been known to visit rooms 201 and 203. She's been seen sitting at a desk in 203 and has been known to sit on the bed next to a guest in that room. People
like
with
the bed, just you feel the sensation of sitting on the bed with you. They're not
Right.
physically seeing her sit next to you. Or
right.
they have. Oh
No, they haven't seen her. They just felt her sit down.
Okay.
A strong scent of roses has been noticed in 201, and her apparition has been seen in that room as if she is just going about her daily business, cleaning her
Yeah,
house,
doing
whatever
her
it is
job,
she
yeah.
did,
Mm-hmm.
doing her job as a mother and a wife. Her apparition has also been seen or felt, or her presence felt, on the 3rd floor, and one time she even kissed the cheek of a previous owner as he lay in bed.
What?
Yeah. So,
Guess
she's
found a little liking to him.
I guess she did. William had a study on the 4th floor, and he had it up there because it was away from all the noises of a large family. I mean, 10, 12 people in a house. It gets noisy.
I was just laughing because Doppel was like, "Take the bed, Annie. I'll sleep on the couch."
Yeah,
I love our chat people.
I do too. They come up with some good stuff. Um,
Gotta love the smart humor. Like it all.
like I said, William had a study on the fourth floor, and his presence has often been felt up there. Excuse me. Actually, the room is presently unused, but there's been a strange light seen in the room. And he is also known to come through the front door. Now, one time the manager was sitting at the check-in desk and she heard the doorbell. So she looked up. It was a glass door. And she looked up and she didn't see anybody. She said, there was no one standing there. So she went back to what she was doing. And this doorbell rang another 2 times and she just ignored it. So the door unlocked itself and it opened, and so did all the outdoor doors in the entire house. Every door that led outside in that house, open. They all opened at once.
They were. Hey, at least they knocked first. You should have went and.
Well, he rang the bell. If she'd have got up and opened up the door, she wouldn't have had to gone all around the house and close them other doors.
Or she could have said, "It's late. Please come back during the daytime hours," or something. She could have been polite.
She could have been.
Ticked them
but
off.
She should have known, working in that place, if you hear the doorbell and you look, nobody's at the door, there's actually somebody at that door. Something.
Give it its own key, then you don't have to worry.
There you go. The spirits of the twins have also made themselves known. There was a woman sleeping in room 201, and she was woke up by a small hand stroking her face and her hair. And she claimed that when she woke up, she was eye to eye with a male child, and then he just suddenly disappeared.
I wonder if,
that would
in a way, she may
out.
have been similar to what their mother looked like. So maybe they,
I don't know, but apparently they were curious and wanted to touch this woman.
But you've had a male boy spirit show up when you were in the shower because you have that stupid stool you bought at that antique store.
At that antique store? Oh, yeah.
You were in the shower. I don't know what's more freaky, having a kid be like, "Hey, how you doing?" while you're sleeping, or somebody peeping on you when you're in the shower.
Really? You come out of there and jump back in the shower and think, "Wait a minute, I don't have a kid that looks like that."
Yeah, and get out of here.
Yeah. Anyway,
she was sleeping. They were stroking.
She was sleeping. He was stroking her face, and when she woke up, apparently he was down in her face looking at her, because she said that when she opened her eyes, she was looking eye to eye.
Yeah, he was
to
leaning
this child.
forward at her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of small feet running up and down the hallways have been heard by both guests and staff. Children's voices are heard when there are no children in the place. But none of the spirits haunting this place seem to be violent. In fact, from the reports, they appear to be kind, loving, and curious. And in no report did it state that anyone who encountered one or more of these spirits was afraid. I'm sure they were startled, but none of them reported being afraid or sensing anything dangerous. So, but like I said, it's now an upscale bed and breakfast, and the rooms range from $205 to $295 a night, and the suites range from $275 to $325 a night. But the hauntings are free.
Yeah, you can get the hauntings. They come in for free. So definitely, I guess you could call in and ask to, if you had enough of your friends to take out a whole level of the rooms and then just set up for a whole paranormal investigation for a night or so.
Really?
Or just, or ask them,
ask them. I don't know about that because, like I said, I really, really doubt if they would let paranormal investigation teams in there, because it is an upscale bed and breakfast.
But if you get enough people who come together and they fill up the whole place, it's all paranormal. They got money, it's business. So how is that going to really affect
you
them?
can go in there and spend a couple nights and just set up your camera just for the heck of it, and see what you catch.
But it's always good to call these places and
but it's
contact them and
kinda,
ask them, but you never know.
but it's kind of pricey for me. But then again, if you stop and think, the average hotel
Over
room nowadays runs.
$2, then it's too pricey for you.
If it's over $10, forget it. I'm not
You
putting
have
a
a hard
crowbar
time
to my
taking a
purse.
crowbar to your purse already, pulling out that penny. So
Yeah, there you go. I've been told I'll squeeze a quarter till the eagle screams.
I've never heard that come out of your mouth, but I could probably believe it sometimes. That was a good one. Was that it for that place?
That was it. I have no more.
That poor bird. I can hear them all squawking in your purse now.
Yep. Let me out. Let me out.
Lincoln.
Oh, for crying out loud, at least buy a pack of gum.
Fort
I can just hear it.
Pulaski. Fort Pulaski is another place, like, the one place that you'd mentioned earlier. But it's on Fort Pulaski Road on Cockspur Island between Tybee Island and Savannah, Georgia. Now, this fort was constructed, I guess it started like in 1829, and it finished in like 1847 with, I think, like 11-foot thick walls and 30 feet wide terraplane. Now,
Yeah.
it was thought to be impenetrable by man and nature, like nothing could take this thing down. But on April 10th of 1862, under the command of Charles Homestead, I think that was his name, and the Confederate militia, they kind of were occupying the fort, came under Union attack, and after a 30-hour bombardment by the Union with a Patriot rifle cannon and percussion shells and stuff like that, Charles Homestead surrendered the fort, and it was said to be haunted by the men who lost their lives there due to poor living conditions. They had scurvy, dysentery, starvation, dehydration, kind of like the same stuff you were talking about earlier at the other
Yeah.
place. And they all suffered while they were imprisoned at this fort.
Well, it was in the late 1990s when many of their graves were found through old documents and modern archaeology,
Yeah.
and markers are not in place in their resting place. So,
Yeah.
one being that of the Immortal 600.
Yeah, they have like this monument type of thing up for all these men who lost their lives, and they call it like the Immortal 600, and you guys can go and read about that. That alone is very interesting if you're into the
Oh,
Civil
yeah.
War and history and stuff like that. That alone could make a good show for people who are into that. But yeah, the things that took place during that time and to those men were atrocious, and it's because of these events. Many believe it left like an imprint or of like energy of that time on the fort's grounds, like we were talking about that old prison you're talking about. But many people have shared reports and encounters of paranormal activity while visiting this fort, with accounts of seeing apparitions of both the Union and Confederate soldiers still actively carrying out their duties around the fort and outside on the surrounding grounds. They see these energy orbs emitting their own lights. It's being captured by visitors' cameras, photos, and video, which you guys can go Google and find yourself and look it up. There are reports of people hearing their name being called out while in the building of the old
Wow.
prison, and feeling of sickness, fear, despair, misery hitting them when they're in certain spots of Fort Pulaski. And in 1980s, the film Glory was shot in Savannah, and a group of Confederate soldier extras dressed in their uniforms decided to visit Fort Pulaski on the way to the set. Well, when a Confederate lieutenant officer approached them, he reprimanded them for not saluting him, and he ordered them to fall into line because a Union attack could happen at any time, which they did as to go along with this improv. They thought they were kind of putting on a
Right.
show for the visitors. Well, the officer then gave them order to face about, and then he vanished into thin air. And
Wow.
yeah, and then people also report hearing cannon and gunfire and the smell of it, of course. And then they're hearing these screams of men in pain and anguish. And they also hear voices and conversations. They hear their name being said. People have said to have been touched in many parts when they're visiting this fort and everything else. So because of how all these men died there through the Immortal 600, which you can kind of read about, it was pretty brutal. And their treatment that they were being treated there in this prison was just as bad as the one you were telling about earlier
Well,
at the other place.
a lot of the South, they didn't have to be in prison to live that way because they just didn't have the money. The war effort just wasn't enough to produce enough money to help feed and clothe these people, because a lot of the soldiers were barefoot because they couldn't afford boots.
Right.
But they fought anyway, and it just, the South was started out very, very rich and ended up very, very very, very poor, and their soldiers just were not provided for.
Right. We got to kind of hurry up. We're running out of time. We still have
Okay,
a
the
couple left.
Wayne Gordon House, located at 10 Oglethorpe Avenue in Savannah, Georgia. And I picked Savannah because, like I said before, it's one of my favorite places.
Well, Savannah's
Now,
just plethora.
I love Savannah. Now, this actually consists of 3 buildings and is now called Juliette Gordon Low Birthplace. Juliette was the second child of William and Eleanor Gordon and the founder of the Girl Scouts of America, who currently own the house. Now, this was a typical love story. William, known as Willie, met his wife Eleanor, who was known as Nellie, in the library of Yale University. She was sliding down the staircase when he first saw her, and he decided, wow, this is a girl for me.
That's the woman for me, yeah.
That's a woman for me. Love the way she slides down that banister.
Because you couldn't really show stuff off back then, so
Right.
he knew she had some gumption.
She had some moxie about her. Well, they were married in 1858, and he took her to his family home in Savannah, Georgia. Now, Willie and Nellie were opposites. Nellie was from Chicago, and she did not approve of slavery, and Willie was from Savannah, Georgia, and his family owned slaves. But they compromised. Nellie accepted his love and his loyalty for the South, and he changed his religion from Presbyterian to Episcopalian for her. Now, during the Civil War, Willie fought for the Confederacy, and he was wounded.
Mm-hmm.
Nellie, using her influence and a lot of stubbornness, got both Robert E. Lee and General Sherman, a Confederate and a Union general, to locate her husband. Now, Sherman was so impressed with Nellie that when he took Savannah, he posted guards at her home, brought her mail from her family, and even gave her children treats.
Obviously, he had a thing for her.
He was really impressed with her.
Well,
and
impressed is one way of saying it, but he probably
and some
was
people, unless you really know your history, Central Georgia doesn't have that many old homes left anymore, just for the simple fact of when General Sherman made his march across Georgia. Mm-hmm. He practically burned Atlanta to the ground. That was his thing.
Sherman, yeah, they torched him and his Union.
Everywhere he went, he torched the town. Yeah, he torched the town.
He was a firebug, is what he was.
Yeah, he was what they call a legal arsonist.
Yeah, pyro.
Now, when all the wives of Confederate officers were forced to leave Savannah, Nellie was given special permission to say goodbye to Willie. Now, the couple were reunited in 1865, and they quickly added 3 more kids to their family, bringing the total number of kids to 8. Mm-hmm. So that was another big family. Wow. They remained devoted to each other. Nellie was charming and well-liked, and even impressed Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah, that's a hard name.
I know, who put her in one of his stories. And Nellie loved the description he made of her. His description of her in his story was a little old lady with snapping dark eyes who used very bad language. And she just loved that. Now, Willie and Nellie never left each other's side. But in 1912, when Willie passed away, Nellie was just heartbroken. Even after his death, she remained totally devoted to him, even up to 1917, when in a large front bedroom of the house in Savannah, she was surrounded by her 5 surviving children. She passed away, and Nellie was in her 80s when she died. Now, Margaret, Nellie's daughter.
Age.
Yeah, for that time she did. For that time. Margaret, who was Nellie's daughter-in-law, was sitting outside the room, and she was startled to see Willie walk out of Nellie's room.
Yeah, because
he was wearing.
Yeah.
He had died like 5 years earlier. He was wearing his gray suit, and he had a look of joy on his face. And he walked through his old bedroom, then went down the stairs. And just as Willie disappeared down the stairs, Margaret's husband, Arthur, came out of Nellie's room and told her that Nellie was dead. Now, she told Arthur who she had just seen, and Arthur told her it was just the stress of the situation. And as Arthur was walking down the hall, he was met by the butler, who happened to be a former slave, one of their former slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he was crying, and through his tears, he told Arthur that he had just seen Willie in his gray suit walk out the front door, and he had never seen him so happy in his life. As a matter of fact, the butler told them that he knew that Willie himself came back for Nellie at the moment of her passing, and that's why...
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. I mean, he walked out of that room at the time that Nellie passed away.
Like
and he was happy
because... He was waiting for her, yeah.
He was waiting for her, exactly.
They never separated, and they stayed together while they were alive. And now he was so happy that she left the body that they could continue on.
Right. They were reunited.
Yes.
Now, today, as I said before, the house is known as the Juliette Gordon Low Girl Scout National Center. And it's open to tourists. Now, both visitors and staff have reported hearing footsteps but saw no one walking. And one staff member reported seeing Nellie's apparition in the center hall. Now, Nellie's ghost has been spotted looking out a window. And it's also been reported that missing items will suddenly turn up in plain sight, and furniture will be moved after the place closes. Nellie was an accomplished musician, and many have reported hearing her play her old piano, even though that piano has been unplayable for years. And one staff member who comes in early every morning reported that, she claims that often she will see Nellie sitting at the dining room table in her robe. How would you like to walk in early one morning and see that every morning? Good morning, Nellie. You can leave now. Now, all the other sightings and sounds experiences vary from person to person, but the one thing they agree on is they had feelings and comfort through all of it.
Right. It sounds
that was your typical love story,
right.
Is what that was.
Which is a good story.
Yeah, it is.
We haven't even said one like that for, I don't even know, on any of our paranormal haunted state stories. So
right.
We're only kind of rushing a little bit, guys, because we notice we're going out.
Yeah, we're going to
go over a little
running
bit,
a little late.
But St. Simon's Lighthouse. On St. Simon's Lighthouse in St. Simons, Georgia, was first built in 1810. It's 75 feet tall, octagonal lighthouse with a 10-foot oil-burning lamp, and during the Civil War, Union troops forced out the Confederate from the area, and in their retreat, they destroyed the lighthouse to prevent it from being used to help the Union warships. Now, it was in 1872 when the U.S. government built a new lighthouse just west of the old one. The 104-brick lighthouse had a biconvex Fresnel rotating lens that projected 4 beams of light which flashed every 60 seconds. Now, the lighthouse had a cast iron spiral stairway that leads to the watch/service room, up on top.
Right.
Now, the lighthouse is said to be haunted by a previous lightkeeper by the name of Frederick Osborne, who was killed by his assistant keeper, John Stevens, in the March of 1880. Now, I guess what I read, it said that Osborne was basically a complainer and was always finding faults in other people who work in their work and actions around the place. And he made several inappropriate comments to John's wife, while it was said that John himself had made unwanted advancements on Frederick's wife. So it sounds like they're both horny men, okay? But both of them basically had enough of each other. They wanted to be who's the biggest cock on the walk kind of thing. So they said, you know what, we're going to have a duel. So they both standed about 98 feet apart. Osborne had a pistol and Stevens had a shotgun loaded with buckshot, and they took aim and they fired. Well,
that's like taking a screwdriver to a knife fight.
A spoon? A sport to a knife fight? Yeah, or gunfight? Yeah, you got no chance. It's a freaking shotgun and a pistol. But, at 98 feet at that. But so, of course.
Yeah, by that time, that buckshot's going to be spread pretty good, so you got no place to run.
Right. Stephen fatally wounded Osborne and was later acquitted of any charges. I don't know how that happened, but during the rest of John Stevens' stay at the Lighthouse, he began to encounter paranormal activity. Now, John stated that he often would hear footsteps ascending and descending the lighthouse stairs and was convinced it was Osborne's spirit haunting him. Well, you killed him.
Well, duh, you think?
You shot him up. Anyway, another lighthouse keeper that stayed there in the 1900s had a family dog that was reportedly haunted by an apparition as well. His name was Carl Svensson or something like that. And his dog's name was Jinx. Now, the story goes that sometime in 1908, the wife of author Arthur F. Hodge, who was the lightkeeper at that time, had encountered herself an apparition. Well, one night she was having trouble with the light mechanism while her husband was away, and she was, of course, kind of upset and having trouble with the light and just couldn't get to work. So she kind of just called out to the spirit of Mr. Osborne, and she soon saw his figure working on the machinery. So she fainted, and when she came to, the light was working again. And as time went on, several people, from the lighthouse keepers to Coast Guard men, have told of encounters with the paranormal, from sounds of someone on the stairs, voices being heard, sightings of male apparitions being seen. Now, there was a woman named Lisa, she was from Glenn County, who committed suicide by jumping off from the observation deck of this lighthouse up on top, which she did during the visiting hours. So some of the paranormal groups that go there, they claim to have these EVPs from both Osborne and this Lisa chick who committed suicide there. So
wow,
a lot of people are claiming to have seen apparitions, hearing voices.
Sounds like it's really active there.
Well, yeah. And I'm sorry we're kind of rushing real quick, but we're going to end the show right now. We went over 5 minutes. But I just want to say thank you, everybody who shared us. Thank you all who came in and chatted with us. Please subscribe to us and, give us a like and share us with others. We'll be back again to do more live shows on YouTube.
We're going to take the next 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. We will return January 5th, 2016. Our topic will be Escape from Alcatraz, the Anglin brothers. Over 50 years since their infamous escape in 1962. Did they make it? And are they still alive? New evidence says they did. Join us to hear the story. I want to thank our mods. I want to thank everyone who came in to listen to us. We so appreciate it. Thank you, Raven, for a good show. And don't forget to share us. Good night, everyone.
Yep, and subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll see you after the holidays.
Merry Christmas.